In terms of like, so like where we are now, and we were talking about manufacturing robots and driver automation. I think I read something a while back about how actually Uber's business model was initially to undercut local taxi industry as much as possible, and to be a loss-making business for about 10 years. And then when automation kicked in, they would make all of their drivers redundant. So I sort of see that as like the not
How has that worked for them?
well, they haven't got automation in yet, but I mean,
Yeah,
you work in
not
robotics
very well.
and the auto industry.
Oh,
How far away are we, do you think, from full on like robot cars pulling up outside?
yeah, we are quite a while away.
Really,
I don't think people should be expecting that to happen anytime soon.
really.
It's a really difficult problem to solve, and you can separate these things by. I hate to word this like use this word again and again, but it is domain specific. Like you could have robots for a specific cordoned off area, maybe just for business parks,
Mm,
which is a much simpler problem to solve than autonomy everywhere in the world,
right.
right? I just lost the domain dictates how complicated the problem is, right? I mean, you have a situation where autonomy everywhere
Yeah.
in central London is a much more difficult problem to solve than, let's say, in a private space somewhere, maybe somewhere in an off road farm,
Mm,
maybe in a mine somewhere. These are completely different problems to solve. They may be the same application, but the product is very different. The the end result, there's a like something that's um, something like a cyclist
mm.
is a lot less deterministic to to track uh, than just a stationary bush on the side of a dusty road. So
Right.
that makes the problem very different in the sense.
Okay, that's interesting because I thought that we were closer to it than perhaps we are. Because there was a couple of guys that I used to work with at Sky who had Teslas, and I was led to believe that the self drive on those is incredible. And I just wondered if, like, at the moment it's still a sort of symbol of prestige if you have a Tesla. But if as what was I saying earlier about products coming into the like military or the industrial space, and then eventually they end up in the consumer space. Well, their Teslas are sort of somewhere in between at the moment. It's they're in the consumer space, but they're incredibly expensive. Now, if they start coming down into the 20 grand, 30 grand kind of price region, suddenly a lot more people have got Teslas. So, are we saying then that the problems with the weight of traffic and the number of robot cars that would have to factor in other robot cars, etc. Like, is that when we're going to get into problems with it, or have they kind of fixed all of that?
I'll point you to a little video where a Tesla is trying to cross a road,
Right,
and then you look at it and see how many times you clench,
right,
and that'll give you a function of how close we are to solving this problem.
really,
Because yeah, it's a, a highway, or rather a freeway, I should say, a freeway in California
yeah,
is a much simpler problem to solve than central London,
I see,
simply because you have a fair amount of predictability in terms of what you are likely to see
yeah,
on a freeway. I'm not saying it's easy at all. It's a really difficult problem.
yeah,
But if you are comparing these two scenarios, they are very different.
yeah,
But as it's like saying because I have driven in central London, I can now drive in Mumbai.
yeah,
That's you just cannot make that claim because the traffic in some places is insane
yeah,
and often has no rules.
yeah,
And if you have an iota of an assumption of someone's going to drive by the rule, and if that person doesn't, which is very likely to happen in some places of the world, you are fucked.
yeah, yeah,
So it's a very difficult problem to solve. I think I really think a large part of this is also PR.
Mm.
Large part of this is also hype, which is often misplaced and then also drives a little bit of fear about how things are going to change for me when really you use the time to learn some C++.